Power up. Welcome to Energypreneurs, where I bring to you the exciting new opportunities in solar power, battery, and electric cars. I'm your host, Sohail Hasni. I have been tracking and analyzing these technologies on LinkedIn and Twitter for more than 10 years. Now we meet on podcast. Okay, Daniel, finally happy to be connected. We have been in the same corridor but never sat down and had a chat, no?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen each other, we've known each other for a long time, but, it's a great opportunity just to talk finally.
Yeah, so now that we are got ourselves here, maybe we start with, do you want to introduce yourself, who you are, what you have been doing? I know you've been doing a lot of interesting stuff.
Yeah, it's hard to sort of like frame it in a coherent way in one way, but there is a little bit of a thread that sort of runs through what I've been doing. So yeah, I'm Daniel, of course, right? My focus is really around venture capital investment in the climate sector. That's been my main focus for quite some time. I would say the last 15 years, maybe. So originally I came out of the energy industry, economist by background. Went into a lot of political risk assessments, macro analysis, but then from there sort of slid into innovation and focused around how to support innovation. And from there came the opportunity to get into the venture capital industry. So since I would say 2006-07, I've been working with venture capital predominantly and mostly in the climate and energy industry.
Wow. I mean, these three terminologies itself, venture capital finance, and instantly you get a lot of attention, no?
Yeah, of course. There's always this, you get a sexy vibe of venture capital, of course, but that tend to be more on the consumer, the more exciting US, and having been in the climate energy space has been sort of the unloved child of venture capital for some time, right? And as you know, it's such a difficult industry and difficult sectors to really crack. But now, of course, we're going through this sort of the rebirth, I call it, of climate tech, right? Or the second or third or fourth wave even. So it's changing. But yeah, in essence, I mean, venture capital to me is all about, looking for the things that are disruptive, taking the risks, exploring, how we can actually have a more fundamental change and impact on the, both the economy as well on these kind of sectors we're looking at. But it's really around risk taking, and backing of entrepreneurs that are both willing to take risk, but are seeing probably more potential than we are seeing quite often from the perspective of being closer to the ground in, say, an organization like ADB.
I mean, can we start maybe with the macro level? How big is size of this pie? Are billions of dollars getting invested on climate sort of friendly investment in the venture area? Do you have some numbers that you
today? It is in the billions, right? It is in the billions. Well, it's a little bit around how you define climate tech, and it's always been because most sectors usually defined very clearly around a user base, right? Like gaming or something. Whereas climate is really an outcome, right? Right? It crosses so many sectors. And the outcome is really that it's having a positive impact on climate or making our world more resilient to climate. So that's like the definition of climate tech in one way. That is either mitigating, so we have less CO2, and or that we become more resilient from the impact of climate change. But it crosses cutting across obvious sector like energy and agriculture, but also transport, even fintech or financial services, healthcare. So if you're looking at a broader perspective on climate positive investments, yeah, it's easily now in the billions, and it's become a pretty mainstream sector.
Okay, climate positive investment. So how do you define that term? So, and how
it's an art as much as it is a science, as you know. Again, I mean, there are some well-established methodologies for establishing, for example, reduction in something like CO2 emissions. Right, and we know where the CO2 emissions are being generated, and if you can find technologies can reduce those, that's a clear indicator of something climate positive. But even in those, so I mean, seemingly clear-cut cases, you have issues around, direct impact, indirect impact. If you develop a technology that enables better financing of, say, of a wind farm, there's also climate take, right? So it makes it a little bit blurry around how to measure somebody's impact, even if it can be very significant. But I think the starting point is usually where are the emissions, right? Follow the emissions one way. And the other one is follow the impact. Where do we think most of the adverse impact of climate change will happen? Which parts of the population, which countries, which sectors are already being badly affected by climate change and will get even worse affected. So starting with those as a starting point gives us at least an indication around where the most climate positive investment can be.
Now, when you mention that the venture capital that's coming to support climate positive investments, right? There are a lot of public money and private money as well, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think the difference was maybe 10 years ago, was a lot of public money, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leading the way maybe for private capital. And now I'm not just talking about venture capital, but also on the project side, as you know. I mean, I think the difference now is the private sector is clearly leading the way now, both on venture capital as well as on other type of financing. And I think the role of the public capital is really more around closing very specific gap and more importantly, enabling that private capital to flow faster, right? And more broadly. So I think the role has changed on the different sources of capital. But yeah, there's a lot now. And I think, interestingly, particularly in Asia, the sources of capital has changed a lot in the last few years. We see big family offices coming into this space now, big corporates, big companies, not just from Europe and US, but also from Asian companies investing into what we call climate tech. So it's a different kind of capital and for different sources. It's just not the same players as maybe 10, 15 years ago. Much more diverse set of players, much more focused, more savvy. So it's interesting.
And these are coming through public and private fund managers, no?
Yeah, it's a combination. I mean, I think mostly it's coming from private fund managers these days. But the public fund managers, of course, particularly in Asia and more developing countries, are still playing a quite significant role. And, we're starting to see more hybrid as well, where we're having, semi-public sector players teaming up with private sector and doing joint platform for investments and bringing together, the best of both worlds, right? And to some extent, there's a little bit what ADB Ventures and what we're trying to do is that we have our own platform, but we're also working very closely with private sector co-investors in all our investments. And I think that's important because different players have different things to offer, these startups, right?
Okay. Before I asked, you already mentioned ADB Ventures. So this is something that you are involved in. So can maybe take us through what is ADB Venture, how big, and what you're trying to do?
Good. Sorry, I jumped ahead a little bit there. So having been in this industry now for 10, 15 years, and last 5 years, I've been more closely involved with ADB overall. Was always a feeling that ADB has a bit of a gap in terms of being able to fund really early stage, high risk, but potentially very, very high impact investments or startups. As you know, that's been very difficult in the normal structure of ADB. ADB is traditionally more infrastructure or financing of financial institutions. So it's been a gap. And with more and more technology driving development, I think it's been a key gap to somehow address. So, and of course, you've been the pioneer within ADB. So, I mean, trying to push ADB to look at new innovations, funding new innovations. But I know there's always been, not the easiest ride, right? To say the least. So we decided we want to create something purpose-made, you can call it, right? Something that can be designed specifically for funding and supporting early stage, high impact startups. And that's really what ADB Ventures is about. We fund and support, and because funding on its own is not good enough, and support on its own is not good enough. It's the combination of the two. But funding these startups, entrepreneurs, really, right? Actually, from wherever in the world. I mean, we focus mostly on Asian startups, but we also support startups outside of Asia with solutions that could have really big impact in Asia. Mm-hmm. And our focus is really on the climate sector, in a very broadly defined, right? So what ADB Ventures does is that we provide capital and other kind of support to early stage climate focused technology startups from around the world that can deliver impact, significant impact over time in Asia. That's our mandate. And we set up within ADB and leveraging all the strengths of ADB, which is relationships across the region, expertise, etc. But we're operating in a quite different way for the rest of ADB. We have our own investment decision process, so we can move faster, we can take more risk than ADB normally would do. We have our own culture within the team, I think. We have a team that is much more like a traditional VC, which means there's a lot of different opinions in our team. There's a high energy, really keen to support entrepreneurs. I think most people in our team have either been a former entrepreneur or been very, very closely supporting entrepreneurs and startups in the past. And then almost everyone has venture capital experience. So it's a very, very different kind of team than you would normally find on ADB. And that's really ADB Ventures. And the long-term mission is that this is not a project. This is a platform that ADB will have, that we will keep growing. And we want to become one of the largest and leading, the most impactful, what we call like impact tech investors in the Asian region. This is our mission. We set up our first fund last year, and we will set up more funds on the same platform.
So you want to make an impact. So do you have like a marginal cost abatement curve, like a climate? What is the marginal cost of CO2? Or you are just saying, no, we are not looking at such a very tightly drawn project. We just want to see where there might be unicorns in the field, and we just take a bet and take a risk. We are not here to optimize risk. We want to take a bit of extra risk than ADB would, no?
Yeah, I mean, we don't follow something like, of course, as mentioned, we do have an idea around where could the biggest impact be? Where are the big potential climate problems that might be resolved? But we don't necessarily follow a carbon cost curve and so on, because in the end, we think the market knows best what actual cost is for them, right? Like the willingness to adopt a solution is something the only market can tell us, and the customers.
Okay.
Versus a theoretical framework, in the way we think of it. So, when we're looking at will the market adopt a solution, it's a complex equation for the market. It's the economic payback, the risk. The guy at the working level needs to like the solution. The life needs to be better, as well as maybe his manager. It's very complex to figure out why a solution will be adopted and not, right? So the best way for us is we ask the market. So a lot of our analysis goes into assessing the market's interest and willingness in the solutions. And whenever we evaluate a startup, we spend a significant amount of time actually talking to the clients. And if a client loves the product, that's when we get interested, right? And as you know, usually or quite often, just reducing or improving the climate or reducing CO2 emissions, for example, is not good enough, right? It has to be a better solution, right? It has to be a better solution that also has a positive impact on the climate. So, it has to be easier to use, be more flexible, all of those things as well. It just simply has to be better. Same way as electric vehicles simply has to be better vehicles, right? For really to have significant adoption. So that's why, we quite often look at what the market likes. And this is something what we call like, we want the clients to love these product solutions, right? Can't be a nice to have solutions. It should be must have solutions.
What does it mean? You cannot have a nice to have solution, a must have solution, but you start with a nice to have, or interesting concept. I have to figure that out.
Well, in the startup world, there are all this jargon, right? As you know, like pain points and these things, right? And my view is quite simple. We all talk about solution can address pain points. And what does that mean? My view is quite simple. Like any human, we only have 2-3 problems in our head at any point in time, right? That we worry about, that we go to bed and worry about, or when we go to work, it's constantly nagging us. That's a pain point. Something that we're worrying about and is really keeps us awake at night, right? Those solutions that can address those pain points and really make a big difference in the life of, the person who might eventually deploy the solution. It could be a plant operator, it could be a utility or something. But if you have something that, impacts their life positively, right? And solving a problem for them, right? If it's not, it's a nice to have.
Okay.
It can be great economic payback, but if it's not a top 3 problem in their life, it's never going to get priority, right? So energy efficiency, for example, is quite often in that, where great economic payback on paper can save a lot of money as well as energy and therefore CO2. But is it really what most people worry about if you say manage a building or manage a factory? If it's not, it was always hard to sell it to them. That's the difference.
Yeah, it also changes. I remember many, many years ago, maybe almost 30 years, when I bought my first mobile phone. I like gadgets. And I remember one of our doctor friends saying, "Oh, this is a nice to have gadget. You just want to." And he asked me, "Can you give me 10 reasons why should somebody buy a mobile phone?" And I came up with all those weird, I'm in the shopping center. I can call my wife and ask, "Okay, I forgot to buy fish. Why you need a mobile phone? You have a coin phone." But of course, I don't need to justify him. I'm sure 30 years later, he has half a dozen phones lying around. But at that time, it was not a solving a problem because the problems were not there. But today, you take somebody's mobile phone away, even a teenager or a baby.
Or us.
"Oh my God," or us. I would take out my
You
life.
live, right? If I take away your mobile phone, particularly your cell, you will be up at night worrying about it. So yeah, you're right. It wasn't a pain. It didn't solve an obvious need. At least we didn't know there was solving an obvious need. But now I guess we became addicted to it. Yeah, if you take it away, we do have a problem. But yeah, it has to be at that emotional level, right? Now we are emotionally attached to our mobile phones, but we weren't before, right? So you need to create a solution that has emotional attachment. It's not just all about financial numbers, right?
Yes. And I think emotion is something we tend to undermine. Like I work for the public sector of ADB, not like the nice side of you guys where you have more flexibility. But again, a project that we do, it's so much depend on our counterpart. Is the minister or the senior executive we talking to, how vested he or she is personally in the project? Again, as you correctly said, is the person waking up at night to solve that problem, whether it's a problem of rural electrification or reliability, or simply not being able to keep the lights up, which is his responsibility. And that passion often drives whether that MOU or the letter, a memorandum of understanding sitting on the person's desk, or has it been signed, whether that has been chased, or just really reading and making a comment saying, no, maybe we should do it this way. So yeah, that human energy is very important. Doesn't matter what we do.
It's essential. It has to be something in it for them, right? And ideally, it should be as pain-free as possible to get there too, right? We all look at the consumer side, right? And I always had this kind of framework in my head that for a long time, it tend to be that the business technologies or technologies from the industry led consumer technologies until maybe 20 years ago. You had the big mainframe computers, industry first, all these things, right? But really, for the last, I think, 20 years, consumer tech has actually led the way in innovation. And now we need to start thinking around what is the learnings from that we need to apply when we're getting into businesses, industry. And for example, the way Amazon, one-click purchase, right?
Mm-hmm.
That makes it very painless, right? Right. What is the equivalent on climate side? How do you make it pain-free to, you want the upside, but it can also be, you cannot create hassle at the same time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really an equation, right? Upside for individuals, they make better off, and you cannot create extra hassle, right?
Yeah, it's always that sort of cost benefit on the person delivering it, and also intergenerational equity also, right?
That's part of it too, right?
Yeah, it's a complex mechanism. Now, how much money do you have on ADB Ventures? Because I like the bit that you said, it's not just funding, you also bring in the support, right? So help people to develop an ecosystem and the support. So do you want to take through a bit more?
Yes. So when I say, we have our first fund that we raised last year. That's a seed fund, we call it. So we invest into companies that are really usually have revenues, but they are still quite a bit away from reaching break even. So that's a $60 million fund we invest out of. And we also have another program to complement that, where we provide smaller checks faster and take a small risk. And we call it our, slightly misleading maybe, but our seed program. But it allows us to sort of give, checks of maybe $100,000 to $200,000 to startups to try out new things and take a bit more risk, and a little bit earlier stage that we normally would fund through our main fund. And we're raising, as I said, our second and third fund as well. And the idea is really to obviously the world needs tons of capital, so we need to help address this gap. But as I said, it's not just of capital. There's actually my general view that there's not a shortage of capital in itself in this industry, even in the climate industry. It's a shortage of capital that can help de-risk the growth of these startups, right? So capital plus support, right? And what it means a little bit different things for different startups, of course, in different situations. But a lot of it's around connections, right? Getting access to clients, getting access to relationships with government, getting access to relationships with, say, financial institutions, so you can borrow for, say, covering a working capital loan, right? In one way, one of our roles is to help entrepreneurs get access to these relationships faster and in a more, faster than they would otherwise. And not just access relationship, but making sure that these relationships actually deliver value to them. Right? It's one thing to have a meeting, it's another thing to have a meeting that creates value. So that's where we're seeing one of our roles, that as ADB Ventures, and also because of the individuals in the team, we do have a lot of these connections. We have a different kind of relationship with these countries, the governments, with large companies that other investors might have, given that we come from a more development background. And we've been in these countries for a long time. So we have certain, you can call it credibility, and certain depth to these relationships that other investors can't offer. And that really helps the startups. It can help the startups in terms of basically accelerating and what do you call it, using a little bit of jargon here, de-risk the growth, right? So I think that's one case, is the relationships to clients, to partners, and so on. The other one is just showcasing what's possible, right? Like ADB has, and we use it a lot in ADB, as you know, like convening power, or whatever we call it, the ability to bring together a different kind of audience, and showcasing what's already happening out there and how these new technologies can transform and, transfer learning from, China to the Pacific, from the Pacific to Indonesia, from Silicon Valley to India, showcasing what's happening already, and bringing up to a different kind of audience. That's also our role that we can offer, right? And again, that translates into, again, startup things. So what's the value of showcasing? Again, is clients, right? Mainly, right? And potential capital. And the third thing is, as we have this push for an interest in more impact focused and ESG focused and climate focused investment. us coming in with a brand of being, a credible impact and climate investors, we can also what we call, attract other investors into the space.
Okay.
And you can call it crowd in, additional capital, leverage, all of these words we use, right? But it really means that we can try to attract new types of investors that maybe would be not looking at these sectors otherwise. Maybe they thought it wasn't enough commercial attractiveness to the sectors, or maybe they are looking for a clearer impact rationale to invest. So that's our third aspect, that we can crowd in that capital. So, combining that access to relationships, showcasing at a different level, and helping crowd in other investors. That's really what we can help with, beyond providing financing itself.
Oh, that's fantastic, because what you just explained, I remember one of our teachers from the business school days in Melbourne Business School, Joel Barolsky, used to talk to us about something called a relationship capital. Exactly what you just mentioned, that the meeting that creates value as opposed to just a meeting that one goes to, knowing who brings what to the value and knowing into the right time, no? So
venture capital is, I drink way too much coffee for my own good, right? But it essentially is what you do, right? It's all about relationships. We have, the relationship with, every year we're looking at around maybe 1,000, 2,000 business plans, right? Mm-hmm. All of those come through relationships. Yeah, some come through more formal channel, but most of those, and particularly the better ones, I would say, comes through trusted relationships. Mm-hmm. So we need relationships with other investors, with entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. We also need these relationships to help the entrepreneurs. So we're constantly building relationships. Mm-hmm. And leveraging those. But as you said, right, it's not a numbers game in itself. It's really about quality relationships, right? And making something, time is limited, right? We don't have more than 24 hours a day. And, ideally we should sleep a bit and eat a bit as well, right? Every day. So it's about making this relationship valuable. And that's hard. That's really hard to turn relationships into valuable relationships. But that's where we see ourselves as, if we can't do that, we will have failed as ADB Ventures.
Yeah, and then on the relationships side of it, unless you put your money where your mouth is, others don't trust you as well. So that's where I think the funding is very useful, right?
Yeah, you need to have skin in the game, and you need to stay. These are, one thing that differentiates us a bit from maybe other investors, although I think other investors have the same view, is that you need to be fairly patient, meaning that it takes time sometimes to grow a big business. It won't happen overnight, right? And there will be ups and downs. So not only do you need to be a patient investor, you need to be a resilient investor, right? It may take some time, and there may be ups and downs, but if you give up too early, you're losing out the opportunity to have big impact. And thinking through, so you're on a journey with entrepreneur. You're there to support them, not just today or tomorrow, but the day after, and the day after, and the year after, and the year after that, right? So we're building long-term relationships. Really, I would say it's based on trust. With the startups and entrepreneurs that we are backing, and we made around 6, 7, about to make 7 investments, I think, by next week, I hope. And we made around, from our fund 1, and we made around 16 of the smaller funding as well. Mm-hmm. But we're really we're talking to these investors continuously. We're on WhatsApp with them, we're emailing, we're on calls with them, almost, if not daily, then weekly. And this is why it's quite different from a normal type of investment. It's a very active type of investment. You're there to back them, and you're there to help them grow their business.
So you just mentioned that you made some investment. Just for the interest of my listeners, what type of investments are these? Do you mind taking through just roughly?
Yeah.
They are available in the public domain. right? You
yes.
ADB,
yes. Yeah? We make most of them available in public domain, and we make all of them available once we have signed and closed them, right? Of course, that's part of showcasing. We're very proud that we're backing these, and of course, we want to help them get exposure. But just to give some example, there's a variety, right? Some are obvious ones like Clear Climate Link. We made investment in the company in India called Smart Joules. Mm-hmm. They providing what you call like, digital led. It's a digital ESCO, you can call it. So mm-hmm. You're familiar with ESCO, of course. They provide energy efficiency as a service to building owner or building operators or tenants. But it's very driven by a digital platform, as well as kind of smart retrofits. But that in turn is also enabling them to create different financing models for the customers. So that's a more traditional climate tech, but enabled by digital solutions, analytics, machine learning, and all of that, and as well as financial innovation. And they're doing really, really well. Fantastic team. So that's one example. Another example is a manufacturer of electric vehicles. Mm-hmm. And this exciting thing about electric vehicle is that, and you, of course, you know it very well, right? This is the manufacturing electric three-wheelers for urban logistics. Mm-hmm. Also, India actually happens in this case. But exciting thing with electric vehicles is that the cost of creating tailor-made or platforms or vehicles designed for particular purposes, let's mm-hmm. say like last mile logistics, it's much lower than for traditional vehicles, right? Mm-hmm. Have fewer components. You can, you can create something that before would maybe too expensive to have just something for that particular market segment. So they developed a really very high quality electric three-wheeler, mainly for delivery, the last mile delivery in urban settings. Work knowing that e-commerce and all these other sectors are growing very, very fast, right? So they're working with the big fleets and the big e-commerce guys like Flipkart, the Big Basket, so on in India. So that's another company again. Very, very dynamic team out there listening every day to the clients, to the customers, modifying these vehicles every day, I think, to make them better, more robust, more exciting, more attractive to the clients. So those are two very clear climate. But we've also done things that maybe people don't think of as climate in the same way. We invested into a company called Skycatch. It's actually a US company that is operating globally, but also a lot in Asia. They are basically visualizing, or they are creating very high accuracy, high precision 3D models of the world using drones. So they're not using drones. They're not selling and doing the drones itself. They're working with drone manufacturer, but they are providing the software and hardware that enables these drones to capture the data at a really high precision and to analyze and transform this data into really highly accurate 3D models of the real world. Now, this enables all sorts of things. So, for example, you can then compare. First of all, you get to see what you can't see with the naked eye, right? And it applies to almost everything: infrastructure projects, construction projects, mining sector, industrial zones. A lot of these things, it's very hard to know what goes on, and unless you know what goes on, you can't actually take action to make things more efficient. So they're doing something called, they're doing the 3D modeling, but they also something called digital twins, which I know you're very familiar with. But once you have a 3D model of the real world, you can compare that to your 3D model that you might have on your computer of, say, a building. And you can identify these discrepancies, and you can start tracking it against your plan. And you can spot things where things are not going according to plan much earlier on than otherwise. And you can take decisions early on. You can see issues, cracks. You can see problems in advance. And this allows you to save significant amount of money, of course, but also CO2 emissions, for example, by reducing the waste in the construction industry, as well as reducing some risk that, for example, after an earthquake, there might be some structural integrity issues with our infrastructure projects. that is hard to identify by the naked eye. So these kind of digital solutions is another area that we are looking at, and they're more having an enabling impact, but the end game might be that they have very, very big climate impact. So just to give you an example of some of the investments we're looking at.
I mean, that's a fantastic. Thanks for sharing. This is quite a diverse range. But one thing I noted that you mentioned the word team many times in describing. So how important is the idea and the team? I know that you need both, but when you are making assessment of a submission, right?
I would say it's not everything, but it's almost everything. I mean, in the end, there's so many risks out there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're developing a new technology. These are markets that are shifting fast. You usually have strong incumbents, a lot of regulations. There's no end to how many risks are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Only a team, a really, really good team, can navigate and manage these risks. I mean, there's a common saying, I think, that, you know, entrepreneurship, that's really around solving 1,000 problems a day, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's endless problem solving, being an entrepreneur, right? And being flexible and having the vision, but yet being able to address issues every day. So when we're looking at teams that are resilient, are motivated, hungry. Hungry is really, really important, right? Because again, this is not overnight things, right? You need to be hungry, not just for 6 months or a year. It's not a project. You need to be hungry and committed for the long term. So hunger, resilience is something we look for in teams. Expertise is important, but you can also, if you're a really good person, you can find other people you can bring in with that expertise. And therefore, becoming a leader and being able to attract other quality people to join your startup is probably a more important credential, right? So this kind of things, being a leader, being able to attract other people, being resilient, being hungry, and being, you know, what we call, like, you know, you need to be extremely smart at executing. You know, you need to get, you know, stuff done on the ground, right? Mm-hmm. This is not theory, right? You need to be able to work with governments, with clients, with your own staff. You need to be able to work with a whole range of stakeholders to get stuff done every day. So the team for us is really essential. You know, if we think there's generally a big problem to be solved, you know, a must-have solution, like a big pain point, right, that they can address. So big market, essentially. And there's a good team. We think those are maybe the most important. Product, of course, matters. Things like business model matters. But the right team in the right market will figure it out. Mm-hmm. That's how we think of it.
So you need at least 3 to 5 people in a team, right, to call it a team, no?
Over time, yes. I mean, of course, it's you know, there are startups that are driven by individuals, but yeah, they're all teams somewhere, right? No one can do anything on their own, particularly as they start growing. So yeah, I think one factor, as I said, is we're looking at teams, not as individuals. Although there usually is 1 or 2 individuals within that maybe play you know, with the founder and so on. But it is a team play. Mm-hmm. And as I said, right, being able to attract, you know, I always kind of think that when we're assessing a company, you know, I always ask myself, like, would I work for this person? Right? Like, you know, they need to be able to attract people, including senior people, right? And sometimes senior people that are actually older than them and on paper more experienced. So you might have a brilliant 25-year-old entrepreneur. He needs to attract maybe someone with 20 years industry experience. And he, you know, and that's not easy always, right? In certain cultures, right? In particular. So I always ask myself, is this guy someone, that I would work for? Because if I don't feel like that, would other feel like that?
Yeah, I mean, the point that you made is very, very serious. I see that in my work in Central Asia. I was negotiating with one particular country. This gentleman took me for a drive, and all he asked about me, what I was doing, and have I done similar things. And at the end of the day, I said, when are we going to discuss the content? He said, listen, I have a lot of people on this side. You have a lot of people. I'm sure the content is fine. I'm just trying to test that. Can we trust in your team? Have you done it before? And you're right. That's what the experience is. What did you do in Indonesia? What happened? What did you do in China? So it's a middle income country. They want to be able to say, no, the team actually knows what they're doing, right?
Absolutely. And it goes both ways, right? I mean, I think trust is essential here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you need to trust a team that they know what they're doing. And you need to trust that there's a good relationship between us, the investor, and the entrepreneur. But they need to trust us. Right? I mean, we spend a lot of time, working with entrepreneurs so they can trust us. I mean, we will be there. Mm-hmm. We will do everything we can to back you. Right? We don't. Our agenda is your agenda, and vice versa, right? We always talk about being client-centric and customer-focused. We have a lot of discussion with that in the team. To me, it's very simple. There's only one customer ADB Ventures have. That is the entrepreneurs. Right? We are serving the entrepreneurs. Right? Yeah, we have stakeholders. We have funders. But we only have really one customer, which is the entrepreneur, in my view. We need to keep our stakeholder engaged and happy. But it's the entrepreneur that we serve. Right?
Yeah. Fantastic. And then, of course, how many entrepreneurs you serve, that will also give you the credibility and ability, rather, to get more funding from other ventures who do not have access to these guys, right? Because you're going through the ADB trust vehicle, right? So everyone coming for ADB to be the honest broker and the trusted parties. So money is not a problem. You must have raised tons of money already.
Yeah, I mean, money is not a problem itself, but it is also important to recognize ADB can do a lot of things, but there's a lot of things ADB cannot do with ADB Ventures, right? And we open with entrepreneurs, right? I mean, we need other co-investors with us who can provide different kind of support to the entrepreneurs. We are not, a local venture capital fund that can move very, very fast on the ground and help startups with some of those things that are needed on the ground. That's not our core skill set. Of course, we have some of those relationships, but really there is other aspect, right? The bigger relationships, the cross-border things where we accelerate. So we try to be honest. I mean, we can't do everything, and it would be not honest of us to say that we could. And we are looking for. We would have to partner to provide the right support. So it's constantly this kind of like, finding out where our role is and bringing in the other partners, in some case working with other investors to see, so they can see where we fit into this whole ecosystem, right? And it's still evolving, right? I mean, we are also a startup. ADB Venture is a startup right now. Mm-hmm. We have a product, which is that we finance and support entrepreneurs. But exactly how that product looks like, exactly how the support looks like, and exactly what kind of finance, they're still evolving every day. And just to talk about team, everything I said about entrepreneurs also applies to ADB Ventures. We are evolving every day. And, as you know, in ADB, there's a lot of problems to be solved, right? And we are resilient too, right? I mean, I think what makes our team really, I love working in ADB Ventures and with our team, is I think everyone has a passion for startups, for venture capital and innovation, right? If you wouldn't have, it would be kind of hard to be in ADB Ventures because of this. There's a lot of things that you need to do every day to make it work, right? That sometimes can be frustrating and painful. But if you believe in what you do and you have fun doing it, and there are other people in the team that feel the same way, that makes a world of a difference.
Yeah, Daniel. I mean, just a different topic. I see you bringing a lot of energy into the discussion. What is the source of that? I mean, this is a question I asked to many of my guests. For you personally, when did the penny drop moment happen? At what point, or where you were, or what that you just said, oh no, climate change is real. I have to do something about it. Is there a point that you can remember?
First of all, where's energy? I had a lot of coffee today. So that's one. so that helps too. But no. But you need to have a drive every morning, right? To get up, right? Even without coffee, right? And to have that energy. And of course, it comes from other people. I think the climate change aspect is always there, but I always have interest in solving problems, right? And I always believe there is a better way of doing things. There are things that can be better. And climate is one of them, but generally that goes for development and everything. And as people who know me and know me in the team, etc., like I can be a bit stubborn. I can have this view that, if I think there's a better way of doing things, I think one should explore those ways, right? And that kind of what drives me generally. I just think there are things that we can do out there that is not getting done. And there are so many amazing entrepreneurs with great solutions that just could change the world. And not doing that would just frustrate me, right? Maybe that's a word, but knowing that there are better ways of doing these things and that we can address climate change, in my view, and, sustainably in a commercially attractive way, not doing that will frustrate me immensely. And that kind of drives me in one way, just the opportunity to thinking how things can be done better. But it's all about the people around, right? As well as I do, that ADB and organizations like ADB, for all their good things, it can also be de-energizing, right? They can suck energy out of you sometimes, right? All these processes, internal politics, and this goes for a lot of large organizations, right? And we're trying to avoid a lot of that to the extent possible, but we can't avoid it all as ADB Ventures. But whenever you have a call, and it happens at least a couple of days every day, a couple of times a day, with an entrepreneur, with a co-investor, or someone like you, it gives you a lot of energy, right? Once you feel that you are doing this together with others, that's what energizes you, right? So yeah, you need that kind of vision and belief. But I think at the end, it comes down to just working with other people and knowing that you're trying to do this together. That's enough. That's what gets you going every day, right? And it is you're feeling that you're in it together and you're trying to build something, leave a legacy. That's what energizes me. I don't know what it is about you, but it's this, it wouldn't be enough just to believe the bigger picture. I need that energy day to day, working with others and feeling that you're working on something together, right? Trying to fix something together, build something together. And it could really be anything, probably.
I say every word that when I say it. There is a Bengali song which basically says that world things are not even. So if little bit of your help helps someone else to cross the river, when you're crossing the river anyway, there is no cost to it, something like that. So I see that every day, that just one telephone call for me, just one introduction, connecting those dots can make a huge difference in someone else's life, because you and I in our world sit in a privilege that we have quite a bit of network. Just connecting with an idea or a dot or something or an article forwarding can create a huge opportunity for someone else without any skin of our nose. Why not? And to be able to do that as a job is fantastic, right?
Exactly. And you go at the end of the day, if you can make one or two of those connections a day, that really helps someone, right? That gives you energy. And the PowerPoints, the spreadsheets, gives you nothing, right? In the end, it's those connections that make you feel like you made, it sounds a bit cheesy, maybe even trivial, make a difference, right? But that's how it looks like, right? I think everyone agrees. It's like you help someone and you're building something, right? You're helping someone else build is also building, right? And I think that's what drives me now. And it's always been like every job I had in my career, pretty much, I created myself.
Yes. Finally, I always use the same sentence. The work that I do is not someone else's creation. It's mine. So whatever problem I have to face it.
My first job, of course, my first corporate job, it was a position in there. But since then, I identify an opportunity. I can only, and this is a negative, unless I like what I'm doing, I cannot do it. And I need to like what I do to be doing it. So I created jobs for myself, position and gaps where I see the need for me, because I want to do it. I've never been interested in stepping into another job where I felt like I don't believe in this. And I think that's you find a lot of entrepreneurs with the same thing. In ADB, sometimes a bit of a mix, right? But for me, it's always been a such job, right? I just need to, and I just need to believe and like what I'm doing. Otherwise, I can't get up in the morning and do it.
And absolutely. Now that you talked about money, inspiration, entrepreneurship, I'm sure someone will like to know, okay, how do I connect with this gentleman? How do we apply for ADB Ventures? Do you want to quickly take through what are the process?
So yeah, and I'm going to steal this from one of the funds that we work closely with. I read it on the website. But first of all, you can go, there's an ADB Ventures website. I should know it off my heart. I think it's adbventures.org. Maybe I'll find out. But you can easily just Google ADB Ventures, and there's a website, and this says, to tell you how you can get in touch with us, right? That's the formal official way. But having said that, everything is based around trusted networks in what we do. I like startups that can find a way to get to me through networks, right? A good startup should be able to get to us or to any other investors through networks, meaning they should know someone that knows us, and usually that's the way the world works, right? So, that little bit of effort showing a little bit of creativity around how do you get to us through relationships is a good test overall. So I think that's the best way of getting to ADB Ventures and to any other investors. If you're out there fundraising, looking for capital, cold calling, setting in stuff, yes, it can work. But the best way by far is finding someone can make an introduction to an investor on your behalf. That's what I would do, and that's what we prefer.
Good. So, and then when they have the introduction, they follow the procedure, they can expect support and also some equity positioning from the ADB side, right? If everything works out okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we would jump on a call. We don't have we have a process internally, of course, within the team. But in the end, a lot of it's just having initial conversations with entrepreneurs, going through the business plans and getting to know each other. We quite quickly, there's always, we don't say yes to a lot of companies, of course, in the end, because we can't work with all companies and we have limited capital. We also believe that, in order to really help the ones, we need to focus on our resources. And generally what we do is that if we don't say yes, we want to give a fast no. And I think it's very important. And I think actually in ADB generally it's actually quite poor at that. As you know, it's like dragging it out. But there's no value in wasting anyone's time. So we look at companies, we have a conversation. If they don't feel like ADB is the right investor or we don't feel it's the right opportunity, we can stay in touch, but we just walk separate ways.
Good. So where do you see ADB Ventures in 10 years' time? I think last time I talked to Sherwin, he was saying that maybe it could, there's a sufficient demand and of course supply is there. It could be $1 billion fund very soon, no?
Yeah, I don't think you need to wait 10 years for that. I think there's a 5-year vision, if not sooner, in my view. And then partly because there is demand out there, and I think we have established a good track record on our side. And there's a need for it too. I think we will get to that. And our vision was initially, we will establish a large fund and we will crowd in at least $1 billion from other investors and then funders. I feel that we are, and this is my own view, we're on track to do that much sooner than within 10 years. And even then, it's just going to still be a drop in the ocean. But the opportunity, I think it is to do something. There's a lot of capital out there, as we talked about. There's a lot of interest in climate tech. It's still mostly outside of Asia, and it's still mostly what we call later stage, when things are a bit more proven. I think the space that we are operating in, Asia, particularly developing Asia, early stage, high risk, things are still not fully proven. There's still a gap in the market, both from a capital point of view as well as ability to help these companies. So yeah, I think there's plenty of work to do, plenty of capital to channel. And yeah, in 5 years' time, I hope that we are, if not the leading, one of the leading climate or impact technology focused investors in Asia Pacific, managing couple of hundred, well, directly or indirectly, say $1 billion.
Fantastic. I'm sure you will achieve, and then see how we can help you to achieve that as well. Really appreciate your time. Daniel, is there something else I could have asked or?
No. Of course, I like this discussion. It's energizing always to talk to you, right? Because you're an ADB veteran that is very un-ADB. God knows how you survived all these years, right? And I think that's the story.
21 years, yes.
Yeah. God knows how you have survived ADB and ADB has survived you. But no. This, of course. But I really, if anyone ever want to reach out to us, I think we never say no to conversation with anyone, right? If we think there's something valuable to both parties, right? So I really is open arms to anyone to reach out to us in different ways. And yeah, I hope we can have more discussions. It was really nice to have this little chat because it's also makes me reflect upon things.
Yeah, thank you very much with that. And I'm sure we'll have this discussion again and we'll take it from here. Thank you again. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thanks, Sohail. Have a good one.
Thank you for joining us this week. If you haven't done so yet, subscribe to our show. Also, leave your comments and review if you enjoyed today's episode. Follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter at @Hasni for updates. That's SHASNIE. Once again, this has been Energypreneurs, connecting you to the innovative opportunities in solar power, batteries, and electric vehicles. Stay tuned.